Josh won't let me. Let me too, man. All right. We're going to be serious now. We're going to be serious now. Be quiet as well. All right, this is an important time that we do here every week. Not something we take lightly. We take this very seriously here. I want you to be respectful of the people around you. All right, so if you're not gonna participate with us, that's great. That's okay. We love for you to. We're not gonna force you to, but just be respectful of the people around you. This is how much between you and God. Whatever you brought with you today, whatever you're carrying with you into your week, just leave it at the floor, leave it at the feet of Jesus. This is between you and Him. We got Josh and Kavina here. They're going to lead us. They're going to do great. We love them. So prepare our hearts as we get ready.
Hello.
How's everyone's week? Good. Huh? My week's been good. Really good.
Hi, everybody. This mic is incredibly loud. I don't know what my guitar is doing. It's being weird. Keeps like cutting out. We're gonna go with it because it's 7:30. Y'all ready to worship? It's gonna be chill tonight. That's okay. So y'all just have to sing out extra loud. Come on, just because they're not a drum doesn't mean y'all can't clap. Right? Like, there you go. Let's speed it up. Let's speed it up. Salvation sounds a new beginning. As distant hearts begin believing, redemption's bid is unrelenting. Your love goes on. Your love goes on. When the world gives way, you carry us with your endless grace. You cover us. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. The time is up for chasing shadows. We gave the world a light to follow. When the world gives way, you carry us with your endless grace. You cover us. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless.
Tearing through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain, you set us free. Fighting for the furthest heart, you gave your life for all to see. Tearing through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain, you set us free. Fighting for the furthest heart, you gave your life. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Oh, your love is relentless. Behold the Father's heart, the mystery He lavishes on us, as deep cries out to deep. Oh, how desperately He wants us. The things of earth stand next to Him like a candle to the sun. Unfailing Father, what compares to His great love? Behold, His holy Son, the Lion and the Lamb given to us. The Word became a man, that my soul shall know its Savior. Forsaken for the sake of all mankind, salvation is in His blood. Jesus Messiah, the righteous died for love. It wasn't over, for He is the risen one. Then sings my soul. Then sings my soul. How great your love is. How great your love is. Then sings my soul. Then sings my soul. How great your love is. How great your love is. Then sings my soul. Behold, I the Spirit breathing holy fire within, my ever-present help, speaking truth when I can't find it. Up this broken heart and fight my way. Too much time on earth is done. Oh, Holy Spirit, within me like kingdom come. Oh, Holy Spirit, let your work in me be done. Then sings my soul. Then sings my soul. How great your love is. How great your love is. Then sings my soul. Then sings my soul. How great your love is. How great your love is. Then sings my soul. Then sings my soul. How great your love is. How great your love is. Then sings my soul. My God, He who was and is to come, prepare the way until the work on earth is done. Watch as the clouds He rides, swing low, lift up the sun as He makes our praise His throne. Behold, the Lord our God will lead us home. There is a promise, points beyond my failure. And there is a still voice to silence all my fears. And even the worst of my mistakes are miracles in the making. Are miracles in the making. And by your stripes I am healed. With one touch I am made whole. You have spoken, and I know that it is so. In the storm, you are peace. In your love, you won't let me go. You have spoken, and I know that it is so. in every moment, you're working for my good. Jesus, the rock that never fails, your kingdom will not be shaken. Your kingdom will not be shaken. By your stripes I am healed. One touch I am made whole. You have spoken, and I know that it is so. In the storm, you are peace. In your love, won't let me go. You have spoken, and I know that it is so. Your word is settled in heaven, it will be done. Father, let it be done. Yours is the kingdom forever, your will be done. Let it be done. Your word is settled in heaven, it will be done. Father, let it be done. Yours is the kingdom forever, it will be done. Let it be done. By your stripes I am healed. With one touch I am made whole. You have spoken, and I know that it is so. And in the storm, you are peace. In your love, you won't let me go. You have spoken, and I know that it is so. You have spoken, and I know that it is so.
God, thank you for tonight. Thank you for giving us the time to worship you, even as simple as it is. God, thank you that no matter what happens in our lives, it is so. That in heaven it is written, it is done. God, thank you for your spirit in this place. Thank you for all these awesome youth that are here to learn about you and worship you and to fellowship with each other. God, I pray for Pastor Caleb as he brings the word, that we don't leave the same way we came in. I pray all this in your precious and holy name. Everybody said?
Well, good evening. Let you guys find your seats here. My name is Pastor Caleb. I do the preteen and middle school ministry here. And I'm just going to shameless plug, even though Evan already announced it earlier. If you're in middle school and you haven't signed up for the lock-in, you got to do that. It's going to be a blast, and registration's due by Sunday, so check it out. Well, we started a new series last week called Deathbed. And the series that we're in is all about how we put sin to death. Kind of a spooky October Halloween theme, putting things to death, right? And we learned last week that we've been called to set our sin to death, meaning we're no longer bound to our sin. By the power of Christ, his death on the cross and resurrection, we no longer are bound to sin. That is the good news of the gospel. But yet, we still live in sin, right? A lot of us, maybe at some point in our lives, have made that decision to follow Christ, to have Christ come into our lives as our Savior. And yet, we still fall into the same habits of sin. We don't live like we've been freed. We fall into the same mistakes, and you might even think, I'm a Christian, right? I do the right things. I read the Bible even. I come to church on Wednesday nights. I pray. I'm doing all the right things. Why do I still sin so easily? And that's been a struggle in my life. I don't know if it's from growing up in the church or what it was, but it's been a struggle for me to feel like I'm doing the right things. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. Why am I not feeling any different? And it raises the question, what does it mean to be a Christian if I don't feel any different? Maybe I do things differently now, but I don't feel any different. I still feel like I sin very easily. I never really cared for or cared about weeds growing up in the yard. When I was young, does anyone at that age really care if there's weeds in the ground, right? I didn't really care. And I didn't know what the big deal about weeds was. It's all green. They just look a little different. What's the big deal? But it wasn't until this past summer when Melanie and I moved into our own place, I look at my backyard, and weeds are my worst enemy now. I hate them. I can't stand the way they look in the yard. I just want to remove them all. I want to get them all out. Because I don't know what it is about them now that didn't strike me before, but they are the worst. I have a neighbor on one side who doesn't take care of their yard at all. It is basically weed city over there. And I'm like, even if I fix all these weeds, I've still got my neighbor's yard to worry about. So I did the responsible thing. I got a pogo stick. I'm just kidding. This is not a pogo stick. This is a world-class weed remover. All right? Have you guys seen these before? I used a very helpful resource to find these. You may have heard of it. It's called TikTok. Found these on TikTok, and I said, I got to get myself one so I can get the weeds out of my yard. Do you guys know how they work? Yeah. So you find the weed, and then you step on it, and it goes all the way down below the surface, right? And then you twist it, and then you yank it up, and it pulls the whole thing. And then you take it to your yard bag, and you just get rid of that weed. It's amazing. It actually makes removing weeds a little fun. I'll be honest. It's kind of like a game. How many can you get? Can you get the whole thing? How fast can you do it? It's kind of fun. It's still hard work to weed, but it makes it a little bit better. So I got myself this weed remover, and what's special about this tool is that it goes below the surface and it gets the weed out from the roots. How do you guys know that if you pull a weed and you don't get the roots, what happens? It's going to grow back, right? And in fact, you're even giving the weed more time to spread its roots out, to get a stronger hold in your yard. Maybe now you've pulled one up, but now there's like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 20 more. It's so annoying. Weeds are maybe the worst thing ever. So if you only pull out the top of this weed, it'll continue to grow, even though it looks good temporarily, right? At first, you pull that weed out, grass kind of covers up the spot that it had there, and you're thinking, my yard looks pretty nice. I got a good looking yard. But then you let it grow, and then soon enough, your yard's taken over by weeds. The problem only becomes worse when we allow it to grow. I think a lot of times as Christians, we try to run away from our sin. We've got sin in our life, so we think, oh, we'll just remove what it is that we see on the surface. We're just going to take out whatever it is that's on top. So if you spend too much time on your phone and it's causing you to sin, you delete whatever app that is, right? If there's something in your life that is causing you to sin, we have a tendency to say, well, I just need to remove that from my life and I'll be good, right? I'll be fine. I can't sin if that thing's not in my life. But the thing is, when we do that, when we run away from sin like that, and we don't address the real root of our sin, we've not allowed our hearts to be changed. See, we still desire those things. We haven't gone through any sort of transformation. And so when those things inevitably come back up in our lives, it's very easy for us to fall into those same habits. Our hearts haven't changed. And so tonight, we're going to say R.I.P. roots. R.I.P. roots. We have to take sin out at the root, right? So we're going to say that tonight. Say R.I.P. roots. R.I.P. roots. We have to pull sin out at its roots. So some things that I've learned from weeding about pulling roots that I want to share with you guys tonight. Here's some things I've learned. Pulling roots is hard work. It's hard work. You get down there, you got to bend over, you got to get real low, you got to pull it up, you got to walk it over. You know, this thing makes it a little bit easier, but it's still hard work. And sometimes if you've seen these giant weeds in some people that they've been growing for maybe months, you got to get both hands on them, you know? You got to get both hands and you got to pull and pull. And even if you pull it all the way out, or even if you don't, your hands slip and you fall on your butt, right? That's what happens. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you pull, it often ends up with you falling on your butt. It's painful to pull out the roots of things. It's hard work. Another thing I've learned is that roots are not easily removed and that they are persistent. That is why they're so hard to remove, because roots are persistent. They dig into the ground. You know, they spread out their roots even further. They get traction and they get grip in the ground, right? They're hard to remove. It's hard work, but they're also persistent. They dig in and they ground themselves down there so that they can't come out. They're also hard to reach. They're below the surface. You can't easily just grab the root and pick it up because it's down beneath the surface. It's hard to reach. And the other thing is that I've learned is that pulling roots can often seem helpless. So my wife and I this past week, we're going to do some yard work. We had a hedge that needed trimmed. I was going to mow soon, and so we said, why don't we pull some of these weeds? And we've got one section of the lawn that has a ton of them. So we took shifts, and I would use the tool for a little while, and then she would be trimming the hedge, and then we'd switch. And we got a lot of work done trimming the hedge. It doesn't look perfect, but we got a lot of work done. And we looked out at the yard, and there's still so many weeds to pull. Too many to count. So sometimes pulling weeds and pulling roots seems helpless. You think there's no way I can do this all. And if I don't get them all, they're just going to grow back, right? That I can't do it all. And even if I did do it all, my neighbor's yard is still going to take over. It's helpless. It's pointless. So what do? As you can probably catch on, this analogy is that our sin in our life is these weeds, these roots that are rooted down into our lives. And so pulling out sin from the roots, it's hard work. It's persistent. It's painful. They're hard to reach sometimes. And it sometimes seems helpless. So what do? The first thing I think we can start with is stop focusing on what we think causes our sin. All right? Now I want you to hear me out. If your struggle right now in your spiritual life is just day to day, I just have to focus on not doing the wrong thing. I've just got to focus. There's a sin that's got a grip on me, and my focus is completely devoted to just not doing that thing. If that's where you are in your spiritual life, I want you to know that your effort has merit, that God sees your effort, that God recognizes how difficult that is for you. And I don't want you to think what I'm saying is going to downplay where you are in your spiritual journey. But I want you to know that at the end of the day, if all we're focused on is not sinning, then we've missed the point. Because at the end of that line of thought, when you're thinking, I just got to remove these things from my life, I just got to stay away from these things, at the end of that line of thought is the idea that we aren't causing ourselves to sin, but other things in our lives cause us to sin. And I can tell you today that is a lie. That we cause ourselves, we make sinful decisions ourselves, and that is why we need to be dependent on God. Because if we think that we can remove our way out of sin, that we can take the things out of our life enough to where we don't have sin in our lives, then we're trying to do it on our own. Then we're trying to figure it out on our own. And Paul tells us that no matter how faithful and how spiritual and how holy we are, that we're always going to deal with this struggle with sin. It says in 2 Corinthians, I think the verse is going to come up on the screen for you guys. It says, we are pressed on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed. Through suffering, our bodies continue to share in the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be seen in our bodies. If we only focus on not sinning, are we focusing on the right thing? Let me ask it a different way. Is the point of a garden to remove weeds? The point of a garden is not to remove weeds. The purpose of a garden is to grow something beautiful, flowers, to bear fruit and vegetables, to nourish ourselves. Gardens exist for a beautiful purpose of growth. And we remove weeds in a garden to make way for that growth, because the weeds stunt that growth. But the focus is not on removing weeds. The focus is on what we're trying to grow. So in our spiritual life, it's not about removing sin. It's about removing and making a way for God to grow in our lives. It's about making a place where God can be in our lives. The end goal is not to just live sinless. The end goal is not that we have turned away from evil. Hear me out. Your spiritual life is not about turning away from evil. It's about turning towards God. You guys know that? It's not about just getting the sin out of your life, because what Paul tells us is that that's always going to be a struggle. That the sin is sometimes rooted in our lives, and we're not going to get to the point where we can just remove it all out, that we constantly have those struggles. But our focus is no longer on not sinning. Our focus is on God and living in the fullness of the life that He offers. It can be painful to go through that, to remove weeds and to make space for things to grow in your life. It's painful. It's difficult. It's persistent. It seems helpless. But we do it to make room for God to grow. So that we know that putting sin to death, as we're kind of going through this series and talking about putting sin to death, I want you to know that it's not the end goal to just feel like we're sinless, but rather to turn towards God. And that goes hand in hand. What the root of sin really comes down to. The root of sin comes down to us turning away from God. When we turn away from God, we are turning towards sin. So rather than focusing on turning away from sin, we need to focus on turning towards God. It's a nuance, but there's a difference there in our focus that allows us to make way and make space in our lives for God rather than trying to just do these temporary removing things that isn't getting to the root of our sin. When you allow God to come into your life and you make space for him, then you are allowing yourselves also to be changed in your desires, in your thoughts. So that your focus is no longer, how can I not cheat today? How can I not lie today? How can I not steal today? How can I not hurt someone today? But how can I today live in the fullness of the life that God has offered me? That is what I believe it means to pull sin out from the root. It's not about just stopping doing things. Because when we do that, we're so focused on our actions and just doing the right thing that we've totally disregarded our hearts and what God is truly seeking after. So I want you guys to bow with me to pray before we lead into small groups. Dear Lord, thank you for being here tonight. And thank you for this word that you've given that Paul reminds us that we're going to struggle, we're going to have trouble, we're going to have these things happen in our lives that we don't understand, but we go through these sufferings, we struggle and wrestle with sin, so that at the end, we can suffer the death of Christ and be raised the way he was as well. I pray that you'd be with us in our conversations and our discussion of how do we get to this root of sin, of turning towards you, of focusing solely on you. I pray that you'd be with us and that you'd help us to see that and steer us towards you more and more. It's in your name we pray. Amen. You guys have some time to break off into small groups, so go ahead into your regular areas.